What if everything you thought you knew about death was completely wrong? What if, instead of being the terrifying end we've all been conditioned to fear, death is actually the most extraordinary journey your consciousness will ever embark upon? But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. Today I'm going to share with you revelations that will fundamentally shift your understanding of what happens in those crucial first moments after your heart stops beating. These aren't theories or philosophical musings. They're documented insights from Edgar Cayce, America's most meticulously recorded psychic, whose 14,000 documented readings have provided unprecedented glimpses into the afterlife that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about consciousness itself. Has this ever happened to you? You've lost someone close, and in those grief-stricken days that followed, you felt their presence so strongly it almost took your breath away? Maybe you dismissed it as wishful thinking, but what if I told you that according to Cayce's extraordinary findings, these experiences aren't products of your imagination at all, but actual spiritual communications occurring during a very specific window of time after death? Most people spend their entire lives terrified of that unknown moment when their physical body will cease to function. We avoid thinking about it, talking about it, preparing for it. Yet death remains the one guarantee every single one of us will face. But here's what changes everything. Cayce's readings reveal that this fear stems not from any real danger in the death process itself, but from our complete misunderstanding of what actually occurs during those first critical minutes of transition. Through decades of trance states, working from his modest office in Portland, Oregon, Edgar Cayce channeled information that his stenographer Maria Thompson could barely believe she was recording. What emerged from these sessions was a detailed map of consciousness during death that contradicts nearly everything popular culture has taught us about dying. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover might surprise you more than anything you've ever heard about the afterlife. Cayce didn't just describe death as a peaceful drifting toward the light. He revealed a complex, multi-phase process where your soul remains fully conscious, actively engaged, and incredibly purposeful during that first hour after your physical body stops functioning. The implications of these findings are staggering. We're not talking about vague spiritual concepts here, but specific, documented cases where Cayce described exactly what departed souls were experiencing, how they were communicating with living family members, and most remarkably, how they were making conscious choices about their spiritual future based on their earthly experiences and karmic development. Imagine discovering that death isn't the end of your story, but rather a graduation ceremony where your soul reviews everything it has learned, reconnects with loved ones who passed before you, and actively chooses its next phase of existence. Picture learning that the way you live your life right now, your spiritual practices, your service to others, your consciousness development, directly impacts how smooth and beautiful your transition will be when that moment arrives. What you're about to learn challenges the Western world's death anxiety at its very core. While Eastern traditions have long emphasized preparation for conscious dying, Cayce's readings provide a bridge for modern seekers, offering concrete insights into what consciousness experiences during those pivotal first moments of spiritual transition. The documented cases we'll explore reveal something that will absolutely transform how you view not just death, but life itself. Because according to Cayce's most shocking revelation, what happens in that first hour after death isn't random or predetermined. It's directly influenced by choices you're making right now, in this very moment, about how consciously you're living your earthly existence. Here's where this journey takes a fascinating turn that will completely reshape your understanding of what consciousness actually experiences in those pivotal moments. Picture this: a modest office in Portland, Oregon, where one of the most extraordinary transformations in human understanding was quietly taking place, one trance session at a time. Edgar Cayce wasn't just having occasional spiritual insights. He was systematically entering deep altered states over 14,000 times throughout his life, each session meticulously documented by the Institute for Spiritual Research and Development. His stenographer, Maria Thompson, thought she was simply recording spiritual guidance and healing advice. She had no idea she was about to witness revelations that would challenge the very foundations of how we understand consciousness and death. The hidden truth behind reading 574914 changed everything. As Thompson transcribed Cayce's words that day, she found herself documenting something unprecedented, a detailed step-by-step description of what human consciousness actually experiences immediately after physical death. The impact of these revelations went far beyond anything she had prepared herself to hear. But here's what makes these findings so revolutionary. They completely contradict the simplified narrative that popular culture has fed us for decades. You know the story, the peaceful journey toward the light, the instant transition to whatever comes next. It sounds comforting, doesn't it? But according to Cayce's documented experiences, this romanticized version misses the profound complexity of what actually unfolds during those crucial first moments. What Cayce revealed through his trance states was something far more intricate and purposeful. The moment your physical body ceases to function, your soul doesn't just drift peacefully toward some distant light. Instead, it enters what he called the transition period, a sophisticated, multi-phase process that involves active spiritual adjustment and conscious preparation for whatever existence comes next. This isn't passive drifting or automatic ascension. We're talking about a deliberate, intentional journey where your consciousness remains fully engaged, making decisions that will shape the entire trajectory of your spiritual future. The mindset you've cultivated throughout your earthly life, the spiritual practices you've embraced, the service you've offered to others, all of these factors play crucial roles in how this transition unfolds. Think about the profound implications of this revelation. Every choice you make about your spiritual development, every moment you spend in meditation or prayer, every act of compassion toward another human being, these aren't just improving your current life quality. They're literally programming the navigation system for one of the most important journeys your soul will ever undertake. Maria Thompson's documentation reveals case after case where souls who had developed spiritual awareness during their earthly existence experienced this transition period with remarkable clarity and control. They weren't victims of some predetermined process. They were active participants in their own spiritual evolution, making conscious choices about their next phase of existence based on the wisdom and development they had cultivated while living. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because what Cayce discovered about the specific mechanics of this transition period will absolutely blow your mind. The way your consciousness maintains its connection to both the physical and spiritual realms during those first, critical moments involves a phenomenon that ancient texts have hinted at for centuries, but that Cayce was able to describe with unprecedented detail and accuracy. Write in the comments, this changes everything, if you're starting to see how these revelations transform our entire understanding of both life and death. This phenomenon that Cayce described goes far beyond anything mainstream science has been willing to acknowledge, yet it perfectly explains experiences that millions of people have had but couldn't quite understand. What he revealed about the silver cord connection represents one of the most profound hidden truths about human consciousness that has been documented in spiritual traditions for millennia, but never explained with such precision and clarity. During those crucial first moments after your heart stops, your consciousness doesn't just vanish or immediately transport to some distant spiritual realm. Instead, it remains tethered to your physical body through what Cayce called the silver cord, an ethereal connection that serves as a bridge between your earthly existence and your spiritual future. This isn't mystical speculation. Ancient texts across cultures have referenced this same phenomenon, and Cayce's readings provided unprecedented insight into how this connection actually functions. Think about the transformation that occurs during this process. Your awareness isn't trapped or confused. It's strategically positioned between two worlds, allowing your soul the time and space it needs to prepare for what comes next. This connection creates a safety net of sorts, ensuring that no soul is suddenly thrust into spiritual dimensions without proper preparation and understanding of its new state of existence. The journey your consciousness takes during this period can be understood through a simple but profound analogy that reveals the intelligence behind this entire process. Imagine you're moving from one house to another, not just any move, but the most important relocation of your lifetime. You wouldn't just instantly appear in your new home with all your belongings magically transported, would you? There's an entire transformation process that unfolds. You pack your most treasured possessions, say goodbye to neighbors and familiar spaces, take one final walk through rooms filled with memories, and mentally prepare yourself for the adventure ahead. This perfectly captures what Cayce observed happening to consciousness during those initial adjustment phases after death. Your soul isn't rushing towards some predetermined destination, it's methodically preparing for the next chapter of its existence. The decisions you make during this period, the mindset you bring to this transition, and the spiritual foundation you've built throughout your lifetime all play crucial roles in shaping how smoothly this process unfolds. Behind the scenes of this transition, there's an intelligence at work that ensures every soul receives exactly what it needs for its continued development. Some souls require more time to release their earthly attachments, while others who have cultivated strong spiritual awareness during their lifetime move through this process with remarkable ease and clarity. The impact of your spiritual preparation becomes evident during these moments in ways that might surprise you. What makes this revelation so powerful is how it transforms our entire understanding of death from something that happens to us into something we actively participate in. Your consciousness remains the author of its own story, making choices and preparations that will influence every aspect of what follows. The real transformation isn't just about leaving your physical body. It's about your soul consciously stepping into its next phase of evolution. But here's where this process becomes even more extraordinary, because what happens next challenges everything we think we know about the relationship between the living and the dead. The silver cord connection doesn't just serve as a bridge for the departing soul. It creates opportunities for communication and influence that most people never realize are possible. Write in the comments, "Mind blown," if you're beginning to see how this changes our entire perspective on consciousness and death. The journey through this review state reveals one of the most profound aspects of consciousness that Cayce documented, and it completely reframes how we understand the purpose behind our entire earthly existence. During reading 13683, he described something that goes far beyond the dramatic life flashing before your eyes phenomenon that people report during near-death experiences. What actually unfolds is something much more purposeful and transformative. Instead of a chaotic rush of memories, your consciousness enters what Cayce called a review state, a calm, methodical assessment where your soul begins processing the lifetime that just ended. Picture the most thorough performance review you've ever experienced, but conducted with perfect wisdom, infinite compassion, and complete understanding of your soul's original intentions for that incarnation. This isn't about judgment or criticism. It's about learning and growth. The hidden truth behind this process is that your soul becomes both the reviewer and the reviewed, examining lessons learned, opportunities that were embraced or missed, and the actual spiritual growth achieved during your earthly journey. The mindset you cultivated throughout your life, the choices you made when faced with challenges, the love you gave and received, all of these experiences are reviewed not with regret or celebration, but with the pure intention of understanding what your soul gained from this particular chapter of its eternal existence. The impact of this revelation becomes even more powerful when we examine actual documented cases that prove this process isn't theoretical. It's happening to real people with real families who are seeking answers. There's a particularly moving case involving a woman whose reading revealed exactly what she experienced during her own transition period. The details Cayce provided weren't vague spiritual platitudes, but specific, accurate descriptions of her consciousness journey that her family could verify and find comfort in. This documentation helped her loved ones understand why her passing had been so remarkably peaceful. Behind the scenes of what appeared to be a simple physical death, her soul was actively engaged in this review process, calmly assessing her life's experiences and preparing for whatever came next. The practical value of these insights extended far beyond spiritual curiosity. They provided her family with concrete evidence that consciousness doesn't end with physical death, but continues its purposeful journey. What makes this case so compelling is how it demonstrates the intelligence and intentionality behind every aspect of the dying process. Her family reported that in her final days, she had seemed to be having conversations with people they couldn't see, expressing gratitude for experiences and relationships that had shaped her spiritual development. Through Cayce's reading, they learned that she was actively engaged in the review process, acknowledging the lessons her soul had gained and the growth she had achieved. This transformation from confusion and grief to understanding and peace shows the real-world impact of these revelations. Death wasn't something that happened to her. It was something she was consciously participating in, using her accumulated wisdom and spiritual awareness to navigate this crucial transition with grace and purpose. But what happens after this review process is completed opens up an entirely different dimension of the death experience, one that reveals the soul's remarkable capacity for continued connection and influence even after the physical body has ceased to function. Write in the comments, "This brings peace," if these insights are helping you see death as a more purposeful and conscious process. Once the review process reaches completion, your consciousness embarks on what might be the most beautiful transformation in this entire journey. Cayce's readings consistently revealed that this second phase represents a profound shift in awareness that most people never imagine could be so purposeful and filled with love. This is when the release period begins, and what unfolds during these moments will completely change how you think about saying goodbye to earthly existence. The journey through this phase involves the gradual dissolution of the silver cord, that ethereal connection we discussed earlier. But this isn't a sudden severing or frightening disconnection. It's more like slowly removing layers of clothing that you no longer need for where you're going. Your consciousness starts naturally detaching from physical concerns, those day-to-day worries and material attachments that seemed so important during earthly life, but now feel distant and increasingly irrelevant. Behind the scenes of this release process, something extraordinary is taking place. As your awareness shifts away from physical dimensions, it becomes increasingly attuned to spiritual frequencies and dimensions that were always present but typically overshadowed by the noise of physical existence. The mindset transformation that occurs during this phase is profound. You're not losing anything essential, but rather gaining access to a much broader spectrum of conscious experience. According to reading 2671, this is precisely when one of the most comforting aspects of the death experience unfolds. Your soul becomes aware of loved ones who have passed before you, creating what Cayce called reunion consciousness. Picture the impact of this revelation. You're not entering some unknown territory alone or confused. Instead, familiar faces, souls you've loved and who have loved you, begin to appear in your awareness to provide guidance and comfort during this crucial adjustment period. This reunion consciousness isn't just a nice spiritual concept. It serves a practical purpose in helping ease your transition from physical to spiritual existence. Think about moving to a new city where you don't know anyone versus moving somewhere where beloved friends are waiting to welcome you, show you around, and help you feel at home. That's exactly what happens during this phase of the death experience. The hidden truth about these reunions is that they're not random encounters, but purposeful connections designed to support your soul's continued journey. The decisions these departed loved ones made during their own spiritual development now allow them to serve as guides and companions for your transition. Their presence provides both emotional comfort and practical wisdom about navigating your new state of consciousness. What makes this process even more remarkable is how it demonstrates the continuous nature of love and connection beyond physical death. The relationships that truly mattered during earthly life don't end when someone passes. They transform into something even more meaningful and supportive. These souls have gained expanded awareness and understanding that they can now share with you as you make your own transition. The transformation that occurs during this reunion phase prepares your consciousness for what comes next, a phase where the real decision-making begins, where your soul will make choices that will determine the entire direction of your continued spiritual evolution, based on everything you've learned and everyone you've encountered along your eternal journey. Write in the comments, "Love continues," if you're beginning to understand how death transforms, rather than ends, our most meaningful connections. What Cayce discovered about communication during this transition phase reveals one of the most profound hidden truths about the connection between the living and the departing soul. During this crucial window, something remarkable happens that explains experiences millions of people have had, but were never quite sure how to interpret or trust. The departing soul doesn't just become isolated in some distant spiritual realm. It actually retains the ability to communicate with living family members through what Cayce termed heart consciousness. This isn't the kind of communication we're familiar with in physical existence. There are no spoken words, no text messages, no physical gestures or manifestations that you can point to and say, "There's the proof." Instead, what unfolds is a direct soul-to-soul connection that transcends every limitation of physical existence. Think about those moments when you just knew something about someone you love without them having to tell you, that intuitive understanding that goes beyond words or explanations. Heart consciousness operates on this same frequency, but amplified exponentially. The transformation that occurs during this communication process bypasses the noise and distractions of physical existence entirely. Your departed loved one's consciousness can reach directly into your awareness, transmitting understanding, comfort, love, and sometimes even practical guidance through channels of connection that most people didn't even realize existed. The impact of this revelation is staggering because it means that death doesn't sever the bonds of genuine love and connection. It actually purifies and strengthens them. Behind the scenes of what appears to be ordinary grief, something extraordinary is taking place. Those feelings you've had of a deceased loved one's presence immediately after their passing, those moments when you sensed their emotional state or felt like you were receiving guidance or reassurance from them, according to Cayce's documented findings, these aren't products of imagination or wishful thinking. They're actual spiritual communications occurring during this crucial transition period when the soul is still connected enough to the physical realm to bridge both worlds. The journey through this communication phase explains so many experiences that people have dismissed or questioned. That sudden sense of peace that washes over you during intense grief, the unexpected solution to a problem that seems to come out of nowhere, the feeling that someone is watching over you during difficult decisions. These aren't coincidences or psychological coping mechanisms. They're genuine expressions of love and guidance from souls who are actively choosing to use their transition period to continue supporting and comforting those they care about. What makes this revelation so powerful is how it reframes the entire experience of losing someone you love. The mindset shift from "they're gone forever" to "they're communicating in a different way" transforms grief from hopeless finality into an opportunity for a deeper, more spiritual form of connection. The decisions your departing loved ones make during this transition period often include maintaining this heart consciousness link for as long as possible to provide comfort and guidance during your adjustment to their physical absence. But there's something even more extraordinary about how this communication process works in practice, because what Cayce documented about specific cases proves that these connections aren't just emotional comfort. They can involve detailed, practical guidance that helps families navigate real-world challenges during their time of loss. Write in the comments, "I've felt this," if you've experienced what you now recognize as heart consciousness communication with a departed loved one. The power of these revelations becomes undeniable when we examine the documented case of Mrs. Elizabeth Martinez, whose experience provides concrete proof that heart consciousness communication isn't just spiritual theory. It's a measurable reality that transformed her entire journey through grief. When her husband passed away in 1943, what happened next challenged everything she thought she knew about death and the continuation of love beyond physical existence. Mrs. Martinez didn't just experience vague feelings or wishful thinking during her mourning process. Instead, she reported feeling her husband's presence so intensely that she could actually sense his emotional state with remarkable accuracy. The transformation in her awareness allowed her to perceive his continued concern for her well-being and his desire to help her navigate the practical challenges of life without his physical presence. But here's where this case becomes truly extraordinary. She began receiving specific guidance about practical matters that only her husband would have known about or cared to address. The impact of these communications went far beyond emotional comfort. Behind the scenes of what appeared to be a widow coping with loss, there was an active partnership continuing between two souls who refused to let physical death interrupt their connection. Her husband's consciousness was providing detailed guidance about financial decisions, family matters, and even day-to-day choices that demonstrated an intimate knowledge of her circumstances and needs. What makes Mrs. Martinez's experience so compelling is that she didn't just accept these communications without question. The mindset of a grieving person often includes doubt, wondering if these experiences are real or just products of desperate hope. So she made a decision that would provide definitive validation. She requested a reading from Edgar Cayce about her experiences, seeking confirmation about whether her husband was actually communicating with her or if she was imagining these profound connections. Reading 1472-2 changed everything for both Mrs. Martinez and the broader understanding of consciousness after death. Cayce's response wasn't ambiguous spiritual platitudes or gentle reassurance designed to comfort a grieving widow. Instead, he provided specific confirmation that her husband was indeed actively communicating with her during his transition period, using the heart-consciousness connection we've been discussing to bridge the gap between physical and spiritual existence. This validation didn't just provide comfort to Mrs. Martinez, it offered scientific-level documentation that death doesn't sever the bonds of love and spiritual connection between family members. The journey she had been on wasn't a psychological coping mechanism or wishful thinking, but genuine spiritual communication with a soul who was consciously choosing to maintain connection during his transition process. The hidden truth revealed through this documented case is that souls in transition retain both the ability and the desire to continue caring for and guiding their earthly loved ones. The decisions they make during this crucial period often prioritize maintaining these loving connections for as long as possible, proving that consciousness doesn't become self-absorbed or disconnected after death, but actually becomes more focused on service and love than ever before. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because what happens after this communication phase reaches its natural conclusion reveals the most crucial decision-making period in the entire death process, a time when the soul's choices will determine the entire direction of its continued spiritual evolution. Write in the comments, "This gives me hope," if Mrs. Martinez's documented experience helps you believe in the continuation of love beyond physical death. As the communication phase reaches its natural completion, your consciousness enters what might be the most pivotal moment in your entire spiritual existence. Reading 254-68 unveiled something that completely revolutionizes our understanding of what happens during this final phase of the first hour after death. This is when your soul faces what Cayce called the selection period, a time when you make crucial decisions about your next phase of existence that will shape your spiritual journey for potentially thousands of years. The hidden truth about this process will absolutely transform how you think about personal responsibility and spiritual evolution. This isn't about some external divine being sitting in judgment, weighing your earthly actions on cosmic scales and determining your fate. Instead, what unfolds is far more empowering and profound. Your soul becomes both the judge and the jury, making decisions based on its own spiritual readiness and karmic requirements for continued growth and development. Think about the impact of this revelation. You're not a passive victim waiting for someone else to decide your spiritual future. The mindset you've cultivated throughout your earthly existence, the spiritual development you've achieved, the lessons you've learned, and the ones you still need to master. All of these factors become the foundation for conscious choice-making about what comes next in your eternal journey. Behind the scenes of this selection process, something extraordinary occurs that gives your soul access to information that most people can't even imagine exists. During this crucial decision-making period, your consciousness gains entry to what Cayce termed the Akashic records, a cosmic library that contains the complete history of your soul's existence across all incarnations and dimensions. Picture having access to the most comprehensive personal database ever created. But instead of containing just this lifetime's experiences, it holds every thought, action, emotion, relationship, challenge, triumph, and lesson from all of your soul's incarnations throughout history. These records, which Cayce described as the Book of Life, provide your consciousness with comprehensive information for making informed spiritual decisions about your continued evolution. The transformation that occurs when your soul reviews these records isn't about reliving past experiences for entertainment or nostalgia. Instead, it's a methodical analysis designed to identify patterns, relationships, and karmic connections that are directly relevant to your next phase of spiritual development. Your consciousness can see with perfect clarity which lessons have been mastered, which relationships need resolution, which skills require further development, and which service opportunities align with your soul's purpose. What makes this process so remarkable is how it demonstrates the incredible intelligence and fairness built into spiritual evolution. Your soul doesn't make these crucial decisions based on limited earthly perspective or emotional reactions. Instead, it has access to the complete picture of its eternal journey, allowing for choices that serve not just your individual growth but the highest good of all consciousness involved in your spiritual development. The journey through this selection period reveals that every experience you've ever had, every relationship you've formed, every challenge you've faced across multiple lifetimes has been building toward these moments of conscious choice about your continued evolution and service to the greater spiritual community. Write in the comments, "I choose consciously," if you're beginning to understand how this selection process empowers your soul's eternal journey. The intelligence behind this review process reveals something that will completely change how you understand the purpose of every experience you've ever had across multiple lifetimes. Cayce's readings demonstrated that your soul doesn't engage in some random walk through past incarnations, flipping through spiritual memories like old photo albums. Instead, what unfolds is a highly targeted examination of patterns, relationships, and lessons that are directly relevant to your next phase of spiritual development. This strategic approach ensures that the decisions your consciousness makes during this crucial selection period are based on the most pertinent information for your continued growth. The transformation that occurs during this review isn't about nostalgic reminiscing. It's about intelligent analysis of your spiritual development trajectory, identifying exactly what your soul needs to focus on next to achieve its highest potential and greatest service to others. Think about the hidden truth behind this process. Every challenging relationship you've navigated, every skill you've developed, every lesson you've learned the hard way across multiple incarnations, none of it was random or meaningless. Your consciousness is now able to see the interconnected patterns that weave through your entire eternal existence, revealing how each experience has been building toward this moment of conscious choice about your spiritual future. The journey through this targeted review can be understood through a perfect analogy that illustrates the wisdom and efficiency built into spiritual evolution. Imagine you're a dedicated student who has spent years working toward advanced degrees in multiple fields of study. Now you're at a crucial decision point where you must choose your next course of study that will determine your career path and impact for decades to come. You wouldn't just randomly flip through old textbooks or casually browse through course catalogs. Instead, you'd methodically examine your entire academic career, specifically focusing on subjects where you excelled and felt most passionate, areas where you struggled and still need improvement, and skills that require further development for you to achieve your ultimate goals and make your greatest contribution to your field. That's exactly what your soul is doing during this review process. Behind the scenes of what might appear as a simple life review, there's sophisticated analysis occurring that examines your spiritual strengths, identifies areas requiring additional growth, and recognizes the relationships and service opportunities that align most closely with your soul's purpose and evolutionary needs. The mindset shift that occurs when you understand this process is profound. Every difficult experience you've endured, every relationship that challenged you to grow, every talent you've developed, it all becomes part of a comprehensive spiritual education that your soul can now evaluate with perfect clarity and wisdom. The decisions you make during this selection period aren't based on limited human perspective or emotional preferences, but on complete understanding of your spiritual potential and the optimal path for realizing it. But what makes this entire process even more remarkable is how your soul's choices during this crucial period don't just affect your own spiritual development, they create ripple effects that influence the growth and evolution of countless other souls who will intersect with your journey in whatever phase of existence you choose next. Write in the comments, "perfect timing," if you're beginning to see how every experience in your life has been preparing you for conscious spiritual evolution. The power of conscious choice during this selection period becomes undeniably real when we examine the most thoroughly documented case that Cayce ever recorded about this process. Reading 2940189 provides unprecedented insight into a soul that was actively engaged in making one of the most profound decisions possible, whether to immediately reincarnate, to resolve specific karmic debts, or to remain in the spiritual realm to serve as a guide for other souls who were beginning their own transition journeys. The transformation that this documented case reveals goes far beyond theoretical spiritual concepts. Here was a consciousness that had completed its review of the Akashic records, understood its spiritual progress with perfect clarity, and was now weighing two distinct paths for continued evolution. The impact of this choice would affect not just this individual soul's development, but potentially influence the spiritual growth of countless other beings, depending on which direction was chosen. Behind the scenes of what most people imagine as a predetermined spiritual destiny, this soul was actively analyzing the benefits and responsibilities of each option. Immediate reincarnation would provide opportunities to resolve specific karmic relationships and master lessons that required physical existence to complete. Remaining in the spiritual realm would allow this consciousness to use its accumulated wisdom and experience to guide other souls through their own death transitions and spiritual development. The hidden truth revealed through this case is that souls don't just drift along some cosmic current after death, passively accepting whatever fate awaits them. Instead, they become empowered decision-makers who evaluate their options based on comprehensive understanding of their spiritual needs, their capacity for service, and their role in the greater tapestry of consciousness evolution. The mindset required for this level of conscious choice-making demonstrates the remarkable intelligence and intentionality that governs spiritual development. What makes this revelation absolutely revolutionary is how it transforms our entire understanding of death from a passive experience that happens to us into an active conscious process where your soul maintains complete agency over its spiritual journey. Every decision you make during this crucial hour determines not just what happens next, but the direction and nature of your continued existence and spiritual development for potentially eons to come. The journey through this selection process reveals that consciousness doesn't become powerless or confused after death. It actually becomes more empowered and clear-sighted than ever before. Your soul gains access to levels of wisdom, perspective, and information that allow for incredibly sophisticated decision-making about its continued evolution and service to the universal community of consciousness. This documented case proves that the choices made during this final phase of the first hour after death aren't influenced by fear, confusion, or external judgment, but by the soul's own assessment of its spiritual readiness, its karmic requirements, and its deepest understanding of how it can best contribute to the growth and healing of all consciousness. The decisions aren't just personal, they're part of a vast, interconnected web of spiritual development that spans dimensions and incarnations. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because what happens after the soul makes its crucial choice during this selection period opens up an entirely different phase of the death experience that reveals how consciousness continues to evolve and serve even after the initial hour of transition has completed. Write in the comments, "I have agency," if you're beginning to understand how death empowers, rather than diminishes, your soul's capacity for conscious choice and spiritual development. Once the soul completes its crucial selection during that first hour, what unfolds next reveals another profound aspect of consciousness after death that most people never imagine exists. According to Cayce's extensive readings, your awareness doesn't just instantly transport to whatever destination or existence you've chosen. Instead, you enter what he called the adjustment period, a phase that can vary dramatically in duration, depending on factors that are directly within your control during your earthly lifetime. This adjustment period demonstrates the personalized nature of spiritual evolution in ways that will completely transform how you think about preparing for your own death experience. The journey through this phase can last anywhere from days to years in earthly time, requiring individualized time frames that reflect your soul's spiritual development and the degree of attachment you've maintained to physical existence throughout your lifetime. The hidden truth behind these varying time frames reveals something crucial about how the choices you make right now, today, are directly impacting your future death experience. Behind the scenes of what appears to be a universal spiritual process, there's actually a highly customized transition that reflects the mindset and spiritual preparation you've cultivated while living in physical form. During reading 14.7.21, Cayce provided detailed insights that explain exactly why some souls move through this adjustment period quickly, while others require extended time for complete transition. Souls who lived very material-focused lives with strong attachments to physical possessions, relationships, or achievements need longer adjustment periods because their consciousness remains tethered to earthly concerns that no longer serve their spiritual evolution. These souls often find themselves in what Cayce called the borderland, a spiritual dimension that exists close to the physical plane, designed specifically to allow gradual release from earthly attachments without traumatic severing of connections that have defined their entire sense of identity. Think about the wisdom built into this process. Consciousness isn't forced to instantly abandon everything that has given life meaning, but is provided a safe space for gradual transformation and release. The impact of material attachment on this adjustment period isn't punishment or judgment. It's simply the natural consequence of decisions made during physical incarnation. If your consciousness has become deeply identified with possessions, status, achievements, or even relationships in ways that define your sense of self rather than enhance your spiritual growth, these attachments create a kind of spiritual gravity that keeps awareness anchored closer to physical dimensions. What makes this revelation so practical for your current life is how it illuminates the real purpose behind spiritual practices, like meditation, service to others, and conscious spiritual development. These aren't just feel-good activities or religious obligations. They're literally training your consciousness to identify with its eternal spiritual nature, rather than temporary, physical circumstances, creating the foundation for smooth transition when your time comes. The transformation that occurs when souls finally release these material attachments during the adjustment period is profound. They begin to remember their true spiritual identity and purpose, gaining access to expanded awareness and capabilities that were always their birthright, but became obscured by excessive focus on physical existence and material accumulation. But here's where this process becomes even more fascinating, because what happens to souls who enter this adjustment period with strong spiritual preparation reveals possibilities for continued service and influence that most people never imagined were possible. Write in the comments, "I'm preparing now," if you're beginning to see how your current spiritual practices are actually preparing you for conscious transition when your time comes. On the complete opposite side of this spectrum, souls who have invested in developing strong, spiritual awareness during their physical lives experience something absolutely extraordinary during this adjustment period. Those who dedicated themselves to meditation, prayer, service to others, and conscious spiritual development move through this transition phase with remarkable speed and grace, accessing higher spiritual dimensions with an ease and understanding that demonstrates the incredible value of earthly spiritual preparation. The transformation that occurs for these spiritually prepared souls reveals the hidden truth about what spiritual practices actually accomplish in your consciousness. Behind the scenes of daily meditation sessions, acts of service, and moments of prayer, you're literally programming your awareness to identify with its eternal spiritual nature rather than temporary physical circumstances. The impact of this preparation becomes evident during the adjustment period when these souls require minimal time to release earthly attachments, because they never allowed those attachments to define their core identity. Think about the profound implications of this revelation. Every moment you spend in spiritual practice, every decision you make to serve others, rather than focus solely on personal gain, every time you choose love over fear or forgiveness over resentment, these aren't just improving your current quality of life. They're creating the foundation for one of the most important transitions your consciousness will ever navigate. What makes Cayce's teachings so practical for your current life is how they demonstrate the direct connection between how you live your physical existence and what you'll experience during death and beyond. The mindset you cultivate today, the spiritual development you achieve while incarnated, the degree to which you learn to identify with your soul rather than your circumstances, all of these factors directly determine how smooth and beautiful your transition becomes when your time arrives. The journey through spiritual development during physical life isn't just about feeling more peaceful or connected while you're here. It's about preparing your consciousness for continued evolution and service in dimensions that most people can't even imagine. Souls who enter the adjustment period with strong spiritual preparation don't just move quickly through this phase. They often discover capabilities and opportunities for service that exceed anything they experienced during earthly existence. These spiritually developed souls frequently find themselves able to assist other transitioning souls, serve as guides for those still in physical incarnation, and participate in what Cayce described as spiritual councils that oversee consciousness development across multiple dimensions. The decisions they made during their earthly lives to prioritize spiritual growth over material accumulation now enable them to serve purposes far greater than individual advancement. The hidden truth that emerges from these documented cases is that death isn't an ending that happens to you. It's a graduation ceremony that you can consciously prepare for throughout your entire lifetime. Every choice you make today about how to spend your time, energy, and attention is either preparing you for smooth transition or creating attachments that will require additional adjustment time later. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because what Cayce revealed about souls who successfully navigate this adjustment period opens up an entirely different dimension of existence, where consciousness can achieve levels of understanding and service that transform not just individual spiritual development, but the evolution of all consciousness. Write in the comments, "I choose growth," if you're committed to using your remaining time in physical existence to prepare for conscious transition and expanded service. What unfolds during this adjustment period goes far beyond simply releasing material attachments. It reveals one of the most profound transformations in consciousness that Edgar Cayce ever documented. According to reading 37444, this is when your soul begins understanding its true spiritual identity and purpose across multiple lifetimes, gaining access to expanded awareness that reveals your eternal nature and the cosmic connections you share with other spiritual beings throughout the universe. The journey through this recognition process completely transforms how consciousness understands its own existence. Behind the scenes of what appears to be adjustment to a new spiritual environment, your soul is actually remembering who it has always been beneath the temporary roles and identities it adopted during physical incarnations. The impact of this revelation is staggering because it means that death doesn't just end one life. It opens the doorway to understanding your complete spiritual history and purpose. This expanded awareness allows your consciousness to perceive connections to other souls that you've known across many incarnations, revealing the intricate web of relationships that spans multiple lifetimes and dimensions. Think about the hidden truth this exposes. Every significant person in your current life, every meaningful relationship you've formed, every soul that has challenged you to grow or supported your development. These connections aren't random encounters, but purposeful reunions with beings you've journeyed with across eternity. The transformation that occurs when souls gain this expanded perspective explains something that will completely change how you understand the purpose behind every relationship you've ever experienced. Those positive connections that brought joy, growth, and inspiration to your life reveal themselves as conscious partnerships in spiritual development that continue across multiple incarnations. But here's what makes this revelation even more profound. Even the challenging relationships, the people who hurt you or forced you to confront difficult lessons, these two are revealed as purposeful spiritual partnerships designed to promote growth and evolution. During this expanded awareness phase, your consciousness begins to understand the spiritual purposes behind all earthly relationships, seeing with perfect clarity how every interaction served your soul's development and contributed to the collective evolution of consciousness. The mindset shift that occurs when you realize that every person who has ever impacted your life was playing a specific role in your spiritual education transforms any lingering resentments or unfinished emotional business into profound gratitude and understanding. The decisions that seemed so crucial during physical existence, career choices, relationship conflicts, life challenges, suddenly reveal their deeper spiritual significance as carefully orchestrated learning experiences designed to develop specific qualities and capabilities that your soul needed for its continued evolution. What appeared as random circumstances or unfortunate events now show themselves as precisely timed opportunities for growth and service. This expanded awareness doesn't just provide intellectual understanding, it creates emotional healing and spiritual integration that allows consciousness to move forward with complete peace and clarity about its eternal journey. The journey through this recognition process prepares souls for even greater revelations about their capacity to serve and influence the spiritual development of others who are still navigating their own earthly incarnations. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because what happens when souls reach this level of expanded awareness opens up possibilities for continued influence and service that demonstrate how consciousness can actively participate in supporting others who are still on their earthly spiritual journeys. Write in the comments, "It all makes sense," if you're beginning to see how every relationship and experience in your life has been part of a larger spiritual education designed for your soul's evolution. The power of this expanded awareness becomes undeniably real when we examine the documented case of Dr. Michael Richardson, whose experience provides concrete proof that consciousness doesn't just gain understanding during this adjustment period, it actively chooses how to use that understanding for continued service to humanity. When Dr. Richardson passed away, his wife couldn't shake the feeling that his work wasn't finished, that somehow his passion for healing and spiritual development was continuing in ways she couldn't quite comprehend. Her decision to request a reading from Cayce about her husband's spiritual condition led to one of the most remarkable revelations ever documented about consciousness after death. Reading 57564 revealed that Dr. Richardson was experiencing profound expanded awareness about his soul's mission across multiple lifetimes, including his pivotal role in establishing spiritual healing practices that would benefit countless people for generations to come. The transformation that Dr. Richardson's consciousness underwent during his adjustment period wasn't just personal enlightenment, it was preparation for an entirely new level of service that transcended anything he had been able to accomplish while in physical form. Behind the scenes of what appeared to be the end of his earthly contributions, his soul was actually gaining access to capabilities and perspectives that would allow him to support healing and consciousness expansion on a scale that physical existence could never have provided. What makes this case so extraordinary is how it demonstrates the hidden truth about death and continued purpose. The impact of Dr. Richardson's earthly work in establishing spiritual healing practices had created what Cayce described as spiritual momentum that continued to influence and guide the development of healing arts long after his physical departure. His consciousness was actively choosing to maintain connection with the earthly realm, specifically to ensure that the healing work he had initiated would continue to evolve and reach those who needed it most. The journey that Dr. Richardson's soul chose reveals something that will completely transform how you think about your own life's purpose and legacy. Death doesn't end our service to humanity. It transforms that service into a different expression of love and assistance that can actually be more powerful and far-reaching than anything possible during physical incarnation. The mindset shift required to understand this concept is profound, because it means that everything you're doing right now to help others, every skill you're developing, every act of service you perform, is building spiritual momentum that will continue beyond your earthly existence. What the reading revealed about Dr. Richardson's continued influence shows how souls can work from spiritual dimensions to inspire, guide, and support people who are still in physical incarnation. His consciousness was actively participating in what Cayce described as spiritual networks that operate across dimensions to facilitate healing, growth, and awakening in souls who are ready to receive such assistance. The decisions that Dr. Richardson made during his earthly life to dedicate himself to healing and consciousness expansion had prepared his soul for this expanded level of service. His expanded awareness allowed him to perceive exactly where his continued guidance could have the greatest impact and how to channel that influence through individuals who were aligned with similar purposes. But what makes this revelation even more fascinating is how it reveals the existence of organized spiritual assistance that operates throughout the afterlife dimensions, where souls collaborate to support the evolution and healing of consciousness on multiple levels simultaneously. Write in the comments, "Service continues," if you're beginning to understand how your current life's work and service to others is preparing your soul for even greater contribution after physical death. The concept of continued service takes on an entirely new dimension when we explore what Reading 11-1585 revealed about soul's ability to actually influence events in the physical world during their adjustment period. Cayce described something he called spiritual magnetism, a phenomenon that goes far beyond ghostly appearances or supernatural hauntings. Instead, what emerges is a sophisticated ability for consciousness to attract specific circumstances and guide particular people in ways that support the spiritual growth of those still navigating earthly existence. This hidden truth about spiritual magnetism completely transforms how we understand those meaningful coincidences that seem to appear during our most challenging or transitional life moments. Behind the scenes of what appears to be random good fortune or perfectly timed encounters, there may actually be departed souls using their expanded awareness and capabilities to create opportunities for growth, healing, and spiritual development in the lives of people they continue to love and serve. The journey through understanding this process reveals the incredible intelligence and compassion that governs consciousness after death. Souls don't become disconnected from earthly concerns. They develop enhanced capabilities to support and guide without interfering with the free will and learning opportunities that physical existence provides. The impact of this revelation means that help and guidance may be available to you in ways you never imagined, channeled through the loving influence of souls who have transitioned but remain committed to your spiritual development. Cayce provided a perfect example of this spiritual magnetism in action through the documented case of Mrs. Helen Johnson, who passed away in 1934. What happened next demonstrates the remarkable ways that consciousness can operate from spiritual dimensions to ensure that karmic lessons and soul development continue according to what Cayce described as divine plan. Mrs. Johnson's daughter was struggling with loneliness and uncertainty about her future relationships, unaware that her mother's consciousness was actively working from the spiritual realm to guide her toward meeting her future husband. The transformation that occurred wasn't through dramatic supernatural interventions, but through a series of seemingly coincidental events that brought the right person into her daughter's life at exactly the right moment for both souls' continued development. The decisions that led to these coincidental meetings weren't actually random at all. Cayce's reading revealed that Mrs. Johnson's expanded awareness allowed her to perceive the karmic connections and learning opportunities that her daughter needed for spiritual growth, then used spiritual magnetism to attract circumstances that would facilitate these important encounters. The mindset required to understand this process involves recognizing that love doesn't end with physical death. It transforms into more sophisticated and effective forms of guidance and support. What makes this case so compelling is how it demonstrates that souls in the afterlife dimensions don't just focus on their own continued evolution. They actively participate in supporting the spiritual development of loved ones who are still learning through physical incarnation, creating a network of assistance that spans multiple dimensions of existence. But this individual guidance is just one expression of a much larger spiritual support system that Cayce discovered operates throughout the afterlife dimensions, where advanced souls collaborate to oversee and assist the spiritual development of countless beings across multiple levels of consciousness. Write in the comments, "I feel guided," if you're starting to recognize how departed loved ones might be using spiritual magnetism to support your own growth and development through meaningful coincidences and timely opportunities. This spiritual magnetism phenomenon provides the missing piece to understanding experiences that millions of people have had but couldn't quite explain. Those meaningful coincidences that seem to appear during your darkest moments of grief, the unexpected help that arrives precisely when you need it most during major life transitions, the perfect stranger who says exactly what you needed to hear at exactly the right moment. According to Cayce's readings, these aren't random events or fortunate accidents, but deliberate spiritual assistance from souls who have transitioned yet remain connected to you through bonds of love that transcend physical death. The transformation in perspective that occurs when you understand this hidden truth is profound. Behind the scenes of what appears to be a chaotic, random universe, there's actually an intelligent network of support operating to assist your spiritual development and provide comfort during your most challenging moments. The impact of this revelation means that you're never truly alone, even in your darkest hours, because consciousness that loves you continues to find ways to offer guidance and assistance from dimensions beyond physical perception. What makes this support system even more extraordinary is how it's organized according to principles that ensure the most qualified assistance reaches those who need it most. Cayce's readings revealed a sophisticated hierarchy of spiritual assistance existing throughout afterlife dimensions, where souls are positioned to serve based on their level of spiritual development and the wisdom they gained during their earthly incarnations. The journey through spiritual evolution doesn't end with individual enlightenment. It opens opportunities for expanded service that benefits countless other souls who are still navigating their own earthly challenges. Souls who achieved higher levels of spiritual development during their physical lives, who dedicated themselves to growth, service, and consciousness expansion, naturally become what Cayce called spiritual guides, or guardian angels for souls still incarnated on Earth. This isn't about religious hierarchy or external appointment to spiritual positions. It's about the natural evolution of consciousness toward greater service and love. The decisions these advanced souls made during their earthly existence to prioritize spiritual growth over material concerns, to serve others rather than focus solely on personal advancement, to develop wisdom and compassion through their life experiences. All of these choices prepared them for this expanded level of responsibility and capability. The mindset required to serve as spiritual guides involves maintaining connection to earthly existence while operating from expanded awareness that encompasses multiple dimensions of reality. These souls provide protection and guidance not by controlling or manipulating events, but by creating opportunities, inspiring insights, and attracting circumstances that support the spiritual development of those under their care. What's remarkable about this system is how it demonstrates that every act of love, service, and spiritual development you engage in during your current life is preparing you for potentially similar service after your physical transition, creating an eternal cycle of consciousness, supporting consciousness in an ever-expanding network of growth and evolution. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because the way these spiritual guides actually operate reveals specific mechanisms through which this assistance reaches those who are still navigating earthly existence, including documented cases where this guidance prevented tragedy and facilitated healing in ways that demonstrate the profound love and intelligence operating behind the scenes of physical reality. Write in the comments, "I'm being guided," if you're beginning to recognize how this spiritual assistance might already be operating in your own life through meaningful coincidences and unexpected help during challenging times. The organization of spiritual assistance reaches levels of sophistication that will completely transform how you understand the intelligence operating behind the scenes of physical reality. Reading 26:289 revealed something that goes far beyond individual spiritual guides helping specific souls. Cayce discovered that advanced souls actually form what he called spiritual councils that oversee the development and protection of souls in physical incarnation according to universal laws of spiritual evolution. These councils operate with a level of wisdom and coordination that ensures each soul receives exactly the experiences and opportunities needed for its next level of consciousness development. The transformation that occurs when you realize this hidden truth is profound. What appears as random life events, unexpected challenges, or surprising opportunities are actually carefully orchestrated learning experiences designed to promote your spiritual growth in the most effective way possible. Behind the scenes of your daily existence, there's an entire network of advanced consciousnesses working to ensure that your soul's educational journey unfolds according to divine timing and universal principles. The impact of this revelation means that even your most difficult experiences serve purposes that transcend immediate understanding, contributing to spiritual development that spans multiple lifetimes and dimensions of existence. The journey through understanding how these spiritual councils actually function becomes clear when we examine specific cases where their guidance prevented tragedy and facilitated healing in ways that demonstrate the profound love and intelligence operating throughout spiritual dimensions. The case of young Robert Thompson provides a perfect illustration of this spiritual guidance system in action, showing how individual souls and larger councils can work together to support life and healing when the timing aligns with universal laws. When Robert was facing a life-threatening illness at age 5, his family felt helpless watching traditional medical treatments fail to improve his condition. The mindset of desperation that often accompanies such situations was gradually replaced by hope when something extraordinary began happening. His grandmother, who had passed away 3 years earlier, started appearing in his dreams with specific detailed instructions about healing herbs and dietary changes that could support his recovery. What makes this case so remarkable isn't just that a departed soul was communicating with a young child, but the precision and medical accuracy of the guidance being provided. The decisions that Robert's grandmother was making from her expanded awareness in spiritual dimensions included accessing information about healing modalities that combined ancient wisdom with practical applications perfectly suited to his specific condition and constitution. The transformation that occurred as Robert's family began following these spiritual instructions, despite their initial skepticism, demonstrated the reality of continued love and assistance from souls who have transitioned but remain committed to supporting their earthly loved ones. The guidance wasn't vague spiritual comfort. It included specific herbs, precise dosages, timing instructions, and dietary modifications that required knowledge far beyond what a 5-year-old could have invented or understood. But what happened next in Robert's case reveals how individual spiritual guidance often connects with larger networks of assistance that operate throughout multiple dimensions of consciousness, creating coordinated support that ensures the most effective healing and growth opportunities reach those who need them most. Write in the comments, "Love transcends," if you're beginning to understand how spiritual councils and individual guides work together to support healing and growth across dimensional boundaries. Robert's mother faced a crucial decision that would either validate or dispel her growing belief in these dream communications. She requested a reading from Edgar Cayce, specifically about her son's experiences and the healing guidance he was receiving from his deceased grandmother. The transformation that occurred when reading 35641 was delivered changed everything for their family and provided documented proof of spiritual assistance that transcended physical death in the most practical, life-saving way possible. Cayce's confirmation wasn't gentle reassurance or vague spiritual comfort. It was specific validation that Robert's grandmother's soul was indeed providing detailed healing guidance from the spiritual realm, accessing information and wisdom that could support his recovery in ways that conventional medicine had failed to achieve. The impact of this validation gave Robert's family the confidence to fully embrace both the spiritual guidance they were receiving and the physical healing recommendations that Cayce provided through his own reading. Behind the scenes of what appeared to be a medical miracle, there was actually coordinated assistance operating between dimensions. Robert's grandmother providing specific healing wisdom from her expanded spiritual awareness, while Cayce channeled complementary physical recommendations that worked in harmony with the spiritual guidance. The journey through this combined approach resulted in Robert making a complete recovery that absolutely amazed his doctors and demonstrated the power of consciousness working across multiple levels of reality. What makes this case so extraordinary is how it reveals the hidden truth about healing and spiritual assistance. When souls maintain connection through love and service, they can access and channel information that supports life and well-being in ways that purely physical approaches often cannot achieve. The mindset required to accept and act on this guidance involves trusting that consciousness continues beyond death and remains capable of profound love and practical assistance. This documented success opened Robert's family to understanding that death doesn't end the capacity for service and love. It actually expands those capabilities by providing access to wisdom and perspectives that transcend the limitations of physical existence. The decisions that Robert's grandmother made during her own spiritual development while alive had prepared her consciousness for this level of service and guidance after her transition. But what Cayce discovered about conscious preparation for death reveals something even more powerful about how the spiritual practices you engage in during your current lifetime directly influence your own experience during that first crucial hour after physical death. According to reading 1947-3, souls who practiced regular meditation, prayer, and spiritual study during their earthly existence experience what he called conscious transition. They remain fully aware and in control throughout the entire death process rather than experiencing confusion or disorientation. The transformation that occurs for spiritually prepared souls during death isn't accidental or based on luck. It's the direct result of decisions made throughout their lifetime to develop spiritual awareness and maintain connection with their eternal nature. These souls don't just passively experience death, they consciously participate in their transition, maintaining awareness and agency throughout the process. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because what happens when souls achieve this level of conscious transition opens up possibilities for immediate service and assistance that demonstrate how spiritual preparation during life creates opportunities for expanded influence and guidance that can begin the moment physical death occurs. Write in the comments, "I prepare daily," if you're committed to developing the spiritual practices that will ensure your own conscious transition when your time comes. The contrast between conscious transition and what happens to unprepared souls reveals one of the most important hidden truths about how your current lifestyle choices are literally programming your death experience. Souls who lived purely materialistic lives with no spiritual development experience what Cayce termed spiritual confusion during the transition period, a disorienting state where consciousness struggles to understand its new existence without the familiar anchors of physical reality that previously defined their entire sense of identity. The transformation that occurs for these souls isn't punishment or judgment. It's simply the natural consequence of decisions made during physical incarnation to ignore or dismiss the spiritual aspects of existence. Behind the scenes of what appears to be a difficult transition, there's actually a compassionate support system in place where more advanced souls step in to provide assistance, guidance, and education to help confused consciousnesses navigate their new spiritual environment. These spiritually confused souls often require extensive assistance from more advanced souls, who serve as teachers and guides, helping them understand their new state of existence and gradually introducing them to spiritual dimensions that they never acknowledged or prepared for during their earthly lives. The impact of this support system demonstrates the profound love and service that operates throughout spiritual dimensions, ensuring that no soul is abandoned or left to struggle alone, regardless of their level of preparation. What makes this revelation so practical for your current life is how it illustrates the importance of spiritual development, not as religious obligation, but as preparation for one of the most significant transitions your consciousness will ever experience. The mindset you cultivate today about the nature of reality, consciousness, and spiritual existence directly determines whether you'll experience death as a smooth graduation or a confusing disruption that requires remedial education in spiritual dimensions. Cayce's revelations about death show remarkable consistency across thousands of readings spanning over 4 decades of documented work. Whether he was providing information about souls who had recently passed or ancient consciousnesses who had transitioned centuries earlier, the same spiritual principles emerged repeatedly, creating a coherent understanding of death as a natural, purposeful process rather than a random or tragic ending. The journey through examining this vast collection of readings reveals that death is not an ending, but a graduation ceremony, a transition from one classroom of spiritual learning to another level of consciousness development. The decisions that souls make during this transition, the assistance they receive, the challenges they face, and the opportunities that open to them all, follow consistent principles that demonstrate the intelligence and love governing spiritual evolution. What emerges from this comprehensive documentation is a vision of existence that extends far beyond physical life, where consciousness continues its educational journey through multiple dimensions and levels of spiritual development. The hidden truth about death being graduation rather than termination transforms how you understand the purpose of your current life experiences, challenges, and relationships. They're all part of a curriculum designed to prepare your soul for its next level of spiritual education. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because what Cayce discovered about the consistency of these spiritual principles across time reveals something extraordinary about the nature of consciousness evolution and how your current spiritual development fits into a much larger cosmic educational system that spans dimensions and eternity. Write in the comments, "I'm graduating," if you're beginning to see your current life challenges and experiences as preparation for the next level of your spiritual education. The consistency of these spiritual principles across Cayce's decades of readings reveals something that will completely transform how you understand the death process itself. His documentation consistently showed that death is completely natural and designed to be peaceful when understood correctly. Not the terrifying ordeal that Western culture has conditioned us to fear, but a gentle, purposeful transition that unfolds according to spiritual laws that prioritize consciousness preservation and continued growth. The hidden truth about death anxiety that Cayce uncovered in reading 136-18 provides profound insight into why so many people carry deep fear about dying, despite having no direct experience with the process. According to his findings, fear of death doesn't actually stem from any inherent danger in the death process itself. Instead, it comes from the soul's buried memories of difficult transitions in past lives where spiritual preparation was lacking or traumatic circumstances surrounded the death experience. Behind the scenes of your current lifetime, your consciousness carries imprints from previous incarnations where death may have been sudden, violent, or spiritually confusing due to lack of preparation or understanding. The transformation that occurs when you realize this hidden source of death anxiety is liberating because it means the fear isn't based on what's actually going to happen. It's based on what happened before, under different circumstances, with different levels of spiritual awareness. The journey through understanding this revelation opens up possibilities for completely reframing your relationship with mortality. Instead of carrying forward ancient fears from past incarnations, you can use your current lifetime to develop the spiritual awareness and preparation that ensures a smooth, conscious transition when your time comes. The impact of this understanding means that death doesn't have to repeat old patterns of confusion or trauma. It can become the beautiful, purposeful graduation ceremony it was always designed to be. This is why Cayce consistently encouraged people to develop spiritual awareness through meditation, prayer, and service to others throughout their earthly existence. These practices aren't just about improving the quality of your current physical life, though they certainly accomplish that. The decisions you make to engage in spiritual development are actually creating the foundation for one of the most important experiences your consciousness will ever navigate. The mindset transformation that occurs through regular spiritual practice gradually shifts your identity from purely physical existence to recognition of your eternal spiritual nature. This shift doesn't just provide comfort and meaning during earthly challenges, it ensures a smooth, conscious transition at the time of death by preparing your consciousness to maintain awareness and agency throughout the entire process. What makes Cayce's teachings so practical is how they transform fear into anticipation by revealing death as continued spiritual growth and expanded consciousness rather than ending or loss. The more you develop spiritual awareness during physical life, the more death becomes something to look forward to rather than dread, a graduation into capabilities and understanding that transcend the limitations of physical existence. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because what Cayce revealed about the specific spiritual practices that most effectively prepare consciousness for death provides a practical roadmap that anyone can follow to ensure their own transition becomes a conscious, beautiful experience of continued evolution and expanded service to others. Write in the comments, "I choose peace," if you're ready to transform your relationship with death from fear to anticipation through spiritual preparation and understanding. If you've stayed with me through this entire journey into Edgar Cayce's extraordinary revelations about consciousness and death, you're clearly someone who's ready to explore the deeper mysteries of spiritual existence. The transformation in understanding that we've covered today, from the silver cord connection to spiritual counsels, from heart consciousness communication to conscious transition preparation, these aren't just fascinating concepts. They're practical insights that can genuinely change how you approach both life and death. I create content like this because I believe these profound truths deserve to be shared with people who are genuinely seeking deeper understanding about consciousness, spirituality, and what awaits us beyond physical existence. If this resonates with you and you'd like to continue exploring these remarkable discoveries from Cayce's readings, along with other documented cases of consciousness beyond death, I'd love to have you subscribe to the channel. The journey we've taken together today reveals just how much wisdom is available when we're willing to look beyond conventional understanding, and there's so much more to discover about the nature of consciousness, spiritual development, and the continued existence of the soul. Leave a comment saying, "This was meant for me," if you made it all the way to the end. I read every single comment and love connecting with people who are drawn to these profound spiritual insights. And if you felt that connection throughout our exploration today, a like on the video really helps me continue bringing these important revelations to others who are ready to receive them. There's a video right here that dives even deeper into Edgar Cayce's documented cases of souls communicating from beyond death, including specific techniques he revealed for developing your own spiritual communication abilities. Click and continue with me over there. I think you're going to find it absolutely fascinating.